In some ways, this is kind of a redo of the last video, but I say that because there's more. There's more than what you saw. The Bar Magna expansion project is quite a large endeavor. It is something that you guys can contribute to as well, which I will get into here in a moment, but hopefully you'll stick around with this. This is probably going to be a long video, and I do apologize for that in advance, but if you do enjoy it, be sure to subscribe. And of course, let's go ahead and showcase why are there more? Well, I didn't showcase a few things, mostly because I forgot, but also because I didn't know exactly where they tied into the story. And honestly, I didn't even really have things broken down quite yet, but I think I've kind of gotten a handle on where I want to break things down. So what we kind of looked at in the previous video talking about the project were these sets here and a couple things off to the side here. But notably, what I have highlighted on screen currently is sort of what you would expect from the Bar Magna expansion project from 2010 Bionicle specifically. Because we looked at those in the last video, I'm going to save those to the end of this video. I'm going to shoot myself in the foot and show you guys the new stuff first. Got to keep you around, right? That said, though, what you're going to see here in the front, I'll get to it's sort of its own separate section. Everything else here is kind of what we would see in 2011 Bionicle. And there's more, obviously. This is very unfinished compared to the first half, but there's a reason for that. Like I said, so starting off here, the Elemental Lords. These actually would probably come around either at the end of 2011 or in 2012. And I say either or because I haven't exactly situated where I want to go with these things yet, but we'll get to that. And the reason for that is because of a couple of things. First off, in 2010, we're introduced to a team of 9 Glatorian. I say team, it's not like they're a team that works together necessarily. 9 Glatorian characters is what we're introduced to. These are the characters we're basically going to follow along with for the next couple of years to a degree. But one of the reasons for that is because they kind of play an important role in the 2011 story as well. What is 2011? Well, 2011 is where we're going to be focusing mostly on the dinosaurs, right? But we're also going to be focusing on something else. The avatars. Not that avatar, but no, the avatars. The avatars are essentially these spirit mythical beasts, if you will, right? They've been talked about in legend for ages, you know, and the Glatorian characters have known roughly of them. Maybe they don't even know if they exist, but essentially what these are these sort of immortal, undying beasts, these beasts that represent each of the 9 factions, 9 elements, if you will, of the Bar Magna landscape. However, what makes them kind of special is that they're not just beasts, they're also characters. Like, essentially, their spirits are tied to 9 characters, of which we'll be introduced to in 2011. So we're not only going to have 9 Glatorian from 2010, we're going to have 9 more in 2011, but the 2010 Glatorian are still important, so that is 18 characters, whereas these other 9 characters are kind of, I want to say they're sort of unaware of their importance to this story. They are, in a lot of ways, like Takua, right? Destined to be these things, but they don't quite know it yet, or they haven't come to accept it yet. Moving on from there, though, obviously, these are just some dinosaur builds. Some definitely need some work, like this little Pachycephalosaur. I probably got that wrong. Here on the front, because that's one of the first ones I ever designed, and it's a little rough, but the point still stands that I'm very happy with this design. That said, though, there's only 4 here right now. That is not anywhere close to the 9 that I want to get to, and some of these are fairly small. The 9 dinosaurs I want to make are all going to be pretty big. Not necessarily Calterix big. He's probably going to be the biggest or pretty close to it. But at the end of the day, they're going to be Titan sized, right? Not canister set, not a gory set. But 2011 has a heavy emphasis on dinosaurs. So we're going to see a lot of dinosaurs amongst the line of a gory, of these smaller character builds, or in other builds as well. So like if there's a vehicle maybe that comes out with this, it might be paired with a dinosaur, and so on. And same thing with like the glider here. You got a small glider and you've got a little pterodon, pterodactyl type build that goes with it. Those two go together, they play together well. Moving on though, you can see we've also got 2 of the spirit beasts built so far, although the orange on this looks really terrible. In real life, I built this with silver, and I do think that the silver looks better, so I'd probably lean back into that. That said, though, the snake build I'm pretty happy with overall, although I do want to, make like the mouth bite or something, be something a little more fun than it is currently, and maybe the body actually like wiggle around with some dynamic movement. I don't know how else to describe it. However, obviously, one of the notable things about this portion, this wave, if you will, is the Elemental Lords. Now, I've only designed 2 of these so far, although they are fully buildable in real life, minus the helmets, and minus this one piece over here, which is a custom piece that I designed, so obviously it doesn't exist. Although I do have some prints of it. In fact, I have one in front of me on my little Triceratops build. So I might as well showcase it, because why not, right? This little guy right here, it's paired with the Stronius armor because it was inspired by the Stronius armor. And I love it. I think it looks great. Anyway, moving on though, back to this for a moment. You can see that we have these 2 Elemental Lords, Elemental Lord of Jungle and Elemental Lord of Ice here at the moment. Very happy with the designs of these guys. Again, both of these fully buildable. I've made a video on the Ice one, which I will link at the end of this video so you can watch it as well, because it's a lovely build. I think a foot tall too, so Calterex is quite large. But yeah, why exactly do I have this stuff paired down here? Well, this is all stuff to sort of world build. It's not really something that you would necessarily buy in a box. Like maybe the Chariot could be paired along with the Triceratops build, and then you've got a set there. Okay, cool. But some of this stuff would obviously be things like, builds you'd find in magazines, or combination builds you'd find on the Bionicle website, or polybags, things like that, right? So that's why this stuff is kind of in its own little cordoned off section here. And then, of course, you've got 2010. So yeah, I know we're going backwards at the moment, but I wanted to give a little bit more focal point to these because I don't think I looked quite close enough at some of them in the last video. So I want to make sure you got a pretty well-rounded look at each of these characters. I do want to mention that the file from the previous video, it had to be uploaded in 4 parts to Discord, otherwise it wouldn't fit, but is available on Discord. However, the Elemental Lords are not currently in that file yet. That'll probably be a separate file to come later. But that said, still very happy with these builds as it stands right now. Now, currently, there are 7 complete designs for these. So Izrakoth's build is now in the file. It's not in the previous video, so probably not in that file. Again, I'll get to it. However, the last 2 characters that you see here are just stand-ins right now. It's just to give me an idea of the general color idea for these characters, but it's not their official builds as of yet, right? Moving on from there, though, we get into the vehicles, of which you can see we have the Sandstorm, which is the bike here in the front, fully buildable as well. Granted, no, it does not have steering, but at least it does have the ability to turn the Thornax launcher on the front. So it's kind of similar to the Caxium build, which is a twin motorcycle set, but neither of them have steering. Kind of annoying. It makes a little more sense for this build, and if you build the Sandstorm, you'll know why. It's kind of a tricky build. But then we have the flagship, which is nowhere near finished. I can't wait to finish this guy, but it's going to be large. There's just no way around it. So moving on from there, though, and it's worth noting, too, that although the Sandstorm doesn't really have a function, this one I plan on having at least 3, including the propellers on the back being able to spin, some fold-out Thornax launchers from inside the ship, and the sails being able to fold up as well. And worth noting, now that I mentioned sails, that one of the gimmicks for this wave, as I mentioned in the previous video, is cloth, right? There are a lot of cloth pieces that would go with this wave of sets. The dragon obviously has cloth wings. The Rickshaw has a cloth that goes over the top of the build here. I could even potentially see cloth wings on the Ornithopter personally. This would have cloth sails, and then each of the 9 canister sets would also have a cloth cape or some kind of, shoulder pauldron type cloth piece to sort of accentuate their characters. And each of them would be a specific color to those characters, a specific, let's say, degradation. So some of them be tattered, some very clean and crisp, depending on the character's nature. That's a separate thing. Anyway, you get the point, right? So the Ornithopter, fully buildable as well, although some of the gold pieces do not currently exist in gold. Unfortunately, we never got the Thornax in gold itself, not the Thornax launcher anyway. And unfortunately, this does not come in gold, though you can get it on bootleg sets in gold, or a shade of gold anyway. However, all of these pieces down here at the very bottom are at least available in flat silver, which I think looks pretty okay, all things considered. Moving on from there, though, the Ornithopter build itself is lovely, in my opinion. The wings, as they stand here, though they look really cool, don't flap against each other because of the shape of them. In reality, I made them with different wing pieces that do work. And again, that file should be available on Discord, but it's just a propeller piece. And the Discord is linked down in the description. I know I keep talking about it, not mentioning where you can find that. I'll get back to the Discord here because it is important. So moving on from there, we have Savarius, the Rickshaw and the Blade Wing, which is a bird mock. I actually have it built right in front of me, though in tan instead of dark red. You've got the Straddle Beast here, which is not finished. As I mentioned, it is a double catapult that plays really well with the Rahi that it straddles over top of. However, the reason it's not finished yet is because this is one that's going to require a lot of playtesting because the function is going to be very finicky. The function of this set is that the beast picks up Thornax off of the ground, lobs them backwards, and then they fall into a double catapult on each side of the Rahi, which can then fire them. So it's a difficult set of functions to get everything working consistently, especially because of the shape of Thornax. And then lastly, here you've got the Sky Tyrant and its mysterious rider, who is going to be our sort of villain for this wave. So overall, that's basically everything I wanted to get into in this video, but that's not the end of the video itself, though I'm very happy I did that all in 11 minutes. But how can you contribute? Well, first off, the Discord, as I mentioned. So Discord is always linked in the description of every one of my videos. At the very bottom of that Discord server is a channel called the Bar Magna Expansion Project. You can actually post your own mocks there. It can literally be any mock. I'm mostly focused on very specific things, Glatorian, Agori, but also Toa characters and Matoran characters because they come to the story later, and I'll get to that in a moment as well. And you can also even contribute things like Rahi, vehicles, constructs, like the Exotoa is something I would consider a construct, right? Robots, whatever, right? And there's plenty of other creations, dinosaurs, etc., elemental lords, so on and so forth. And you can contribute all this stuff to the project. Now, what's worth mentioning is that the Bar Magna Expansion Project is a long-form project, but I will be going through it probably in its own video here to come soon. So if you'd like for your mock to be showcased on the channel, well, that will be in a video coming up here shortly. That said, I did go through the entire channel yesterday, taking a look at some of the mocks, because some of the mocks will be officially introduced to the story, while some of the mocks will be appearing, basically all of the mocks will be appearing in essentially a Rahi Beast-like book, but for the Bar Magna Expansion Project. So that's a project that I've wanted to work on for my Rahi. However, I didn't see as much of a point for my Rahi specifically to appear in a book. That might still happen in the future. But for this project, a book makes a lot more sense because it helps to world build, and it kind of just honestly gives a lot of credence to the community, right? There are so many creators out there in the Bionicle community that have done some just phenomenal work. Outside of myself, many people who contributed to like the dinosaur contest that Duckbricks held back in 2022. And other projects, obviously, from that whole line as well. And many fan builds that have been submitted over time. So I think it's a good idea to have some of those things cataloged, because even if they didn't win like a contest or something like that, if they can be put into this sort of fan project and worked into a story that fits in this world, I think there's something really special about that. And that's kind of what's special about the Bionicle fandom as a whole, is how we are able to sort of come together and keep alive what otherwise would have died, near 15 years ago. Insane to think about. So with all that being said, check that out down in the description below. Of course, you can also check out links to Instagram or Patreon if you want to help support the channel and support this book. The book, by the way, will also be probably a PDF, mostly because I have no idea how to go get it printed, but I can figure some of that information out in the future. If that is something you guys would be interested in, please let me know. Because that is absolutely something I would consider doing. And also worth noting, too, that the project in and of itself, sort of a synopsis, let's say a summary of the project, will be included with the book, too, because there's something really special that I have planned. And maybe I should just reveal it here. So my thoughts, as of right now, is that 2010 focuses on this team, for lack of a better term, of Glatorian, who don't really know that their destinies are entwined to some degree, but as it goes forward, we start to see these Glatorian becoming more important, running through into 2011, where it starts to become a story about these dinosaurs, obviously, after the Reformation, a story about the avatars, the elemental spirits, if you will, And then working into 2012, where we are focusing more heavily on things like the Elemental Lords, but also, I didn't really talk about this in the previous video because I wasn't really sure of this myself yet, but it's worth noting that a lot of the inspiration for 2009 Bionicle comes from a sort of like Greco-Roman understanding of history, right? And so I wanted to kind of lean into that because there's a lot of really cool stuff, specifically in like Greco-Roman mythology, that I think would be really cool to see, to lean more heavily into that atmosphere, right? Like Gorgon type mocks, and there are other things, but I can't think of anything right now. Harpies and sirens and just all kinds of really cool stuff that I think would make just some phenomenal mocks in this world. And remember, this is after the Reformation. So how cool would it be to see a return? I know this is going to sound weird at first and controversial because I've also talked about a return of Makuta, but of the Toamata. Not as Toamata, obviously. I'm just using that term because that's what everybody knows them as, right? But the Toa Magna, if you will. What if they're the villain? I'm going to leave you guys to think about that for a minute. All right, so that's it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe again, as it helps out the channel tremendously. Check out the video for the Elemental Lord of Ice, which will be appearing, if it hasn't already, somewhere over here. And maybe I will also link the video for the rickshaw build here as well. And yeah, that's it. Like, do all the algorithm stuff. And I will see you all in the next one. Take care, guys.